my people, how you doing? I hope you're having a damn good day. Welcome back to the channel, and today we're going to be discussing Allegri's set of tactics at Juventus. Of course, he does play a 3-5-2 formation or a 3-1-4-2 formation, however you would like to put it. Either way, he does play with 3 centre-backs, 2 attacking players, as in strikers, 2 full-backs/wingers, and of course 3 midfielders. So however you want to describe that formation, that is the formation right there. So we will be discussing that, of course, trying to replicate and recreate a realistic version of Juventus in the game. And some people, funny enough, I had a friend tell me the other day, like, oh, it's terrorism football. It's very much like Simeone. And I was like, really? So, you know, I have done some homework. I have gone in and looked at what Juventus were like last season. And to be fair, it's not far off of it, of course. It's not the most attractive looking football. It's not like, you know, Pep Guardiola or Mikel Arteta type football. But it is very pragmatic. But very much, it suits the Italian league. But you could also say, in another sense, that maybe Allegri is kind of past it. Of course, he did leave Juventus at one point after leading them to like 5 straight titles. And he was out of the business for 2 years. And football is a very fast-paced sport, so it may have moved on without him. And I don't know. Of course, like Juventus are in a world of trouble off the field as well. It's a whole lot of shenanigans, but we're going to hop on into this set of instructions. Let me know down below if you think these instructions are really good or really bad, or if you would use them. Of course, we are trying to replicate a realistic version of what Juventus are like in real life and try and put it into the game of FIFA 23. So just going through the team, of course, we've got Vlahovic up front, Milik, I know you said Militic, Milik. We've got Weah, of course, a new signing, Pogba, Locatelli, Rabiot, Kostic, Danilo, Bremer, and Gatti. Of course, we also have Szczesny in goal. We've got Keane, Chiesa, McKennie, Fagioli, Perrin, Rugani, and then of course Alexandra. And then on the bench we've got Descaglio, Moretti, and then a few others. Kai Jorge, whoever, 21-year-old Brazilian. I think he could be the next best thing, but we don't know just yet. And then of course we've got a few other players that are more or less out of the team as a whole. I mean, Paredes, Bonucci, Zakaria, even Weston McKennie to some extent, although I did see him playing the other day against Real Madrid, so it was very interesting there. But a lot of those players that I've just mentioned, they're out the team. They're looking to be sold. Juventus are looking to sell them because of financial issues, of course. So that is the team right there. On paper, it doesn't look like a bad team. It's a very well-rounded team. You would think that midfield is incredibly balanced with Pogba and Rabiot in there. Kostic and Weah on the wings. Of course, Weah is more of an unproven player, but at the same time, I do like him in FIFA 23. And then, of course, you've got this defense who, okay, maybe Gatti's not the best, but Bremer's a solid overall, and Danilo has proven at Real Madrid and also at Man City that he can be a top-quality defender. But more or less, this team is lacking in depth, and yeah, it's not great. So just having a look at the formation, I haven't really changed much, you could say. I mean, I have moved the 2 strikers to be more level with each other. I've moved the midfielders, the wide midfielders I should say, out slightly wider. So just having a look at the tactics, Allegri looks to try and implement a press after the loss of possession. Of course, you will look to try and maintain the ball as much as possible, but when you do lose the ball, there will be a press, and that is often led by Vlahovic as well as the 2 wide midfielders. In this case, it's Weah and Kostic. So they'll look to try and, you know, implement a press on the back line if the ball is in the plate amongst the defenders, of course. And then, of course, Milic will look to press the 2 centre-backs when and if they do have the ball. As for the width, it's quite narrow. Like, I'm not going to lie, this is probably the most narrow width I've given in a set of instructions, but it makes the most sense because of the instructions we've given to the likes of Pogba and Rabiot. When out of possession, you want to try and make sure your midfield is nice and compact, so no balls can be played straight down the middle and into those pockets of space that will undoubtedly be created by the offensive build-up play, of course. So when you do lose the ball, your team will look to try and shrink and shrivel, essentially creating a nice compact unit, and also one that is good at pressing as a unit, of course. As for the depth, it's a nice mid-low block, which is really good for FIFA, I'm not going to lie. In real life, not so much, but in FIFA, this is very defensive sound, solidarity, perfect. It does allow for the recovery pace of the likes of Danilo and Bremer to be really great, because if a through ball is played over the top or on the ground, they have got some decent pace on them to be able to catch up the offensive player, or even just outrun the offensive player and then just pass back to Szczesny or find another pass some other way. So Allegri in general is a very pragmatic coach, a very defensive coach, and it has been thrown in his face that he's a bit too defensive at times, and that's more or less what's hindered Juventus. When the reality is, there's been so many issues off the field, on the field, the horrible sales, the horrible acquisitions. Like, you can't really put it all on Allegri, and I mean, he did win 5 Scudettos in a row playing defensive football. So, you know, like, you can't really blame the man for going back to what he knows best. But in FIFA terms, the 55 is really, really good. So I'm not going to complain too much about that. It probably could be higher, but essentially it's set to 55. As for the build-up play, it's set to slow build-up. So you do want Szczesny to play out from the back. Of course, you do want your midfield to be structurally sound. Of course, that you won't just have players bombing on forward at a fast breakneck pace. That if you do lose the ball, right, there is still somewhat a structure and a formation to your team, that they don't just get hyper exposed with one ball down the middle or over the top. And that's normally what does happen if you have a fast-paced build-up set to being on. So it's a nice slow build-up. You will maintain possession. You will retain your structural integrity to the formation, and it works out quite well for everyone. As for the direct passing, it works out very well with the likes of Vlahovic making runs in behind and out wide, of course, but it also helps with the fact that you will be playing mainly with wing backs crossing the ball in. So the direct passing is key in order for those runs to be made into the box. Of course, the likes of Pogba and Rabiot are also quite tall, so them also making direct runs into the box does help pick out some great headers, I'm not going to lie. And speaking of the width to this team, it is set to 80, which is very wide. So when Allegri does try and push his players to try and expand as much as possible when you have the ball, of course, the likes of Pogba and Rabiot have a set of instructions that allow them to play a lot wider than normal, but that also allows for more space to be generated for the likes of Locatelli to maybe function in a little bit more, as well as the likes of Vlahovic and Milic to also function in quite well. But mainly you will be looking to fire the ball out wide to the likes of a Pogba or a Rabiot, who will then find a Weah or a Kostic, and they will look to fire the balls into the box for the likes of your strikers or even your deep-lying, running-on midfield who have got some really banging instructions, I'm not going to lie. But as for players in the box, it's set to 8. Like I said, you want your players running in the box, especially with the direct runs being on. Like, if you have it set to like 2 or 3, which is very defensive, you could say, and more pragmatic, it doesn't really work out, because then you just have the opposition's defenders overcrowding your 1 or your 2 offensive players. So you do need more players running in the box. And I know Allegri does implore the likes of his midfield to make late runs into the box to pick out those open little pockets of space that are generated, of course. As for corners and free kicks, they are both set to 4 as per always on the channel. But speaking of the channel, I just realized that I was supposed to say this in the beginning of the video. I know I'm terrible at delivering messages, but I've realized, and I saw literally today, that 92% of the people that have been watching these videos are not subscribers. Just imagine if you guys were all subscribers. I've had, what, 28,000 views so far this month? Fantastic. I know. Imagine if you guys had all subscribed. So if you could do me the biggest favor and hitting that subscribe button, you would make my day absolutely. And while you're there, hit the thumbs up. That would absolutely make my day as well. But moving on to the instructions, of course, we're starting off with the goalkeeper. He is set to come for crosses and become a balanced goalkeeper. Now, it makes sense because you're not playing the highest line. You're not playing a 70 or 75 or an 80 or a 90 high line. You're playing a nice mid-block, mid-low block, I guess you could say. But it also means that the likes of Danilo and Bremer, who have got great recovery pace, in case they are pushing slightly higher, they will be called upon. But Szczesny, his main role and his main job is to claim balls in the air, make sure no corners are scored, and he does a fairly good job at that. And of course, playing out from the back from time to time. As for your 3 centre-backs, they are set to their base defensive set of instructions. Moving slightly higher, we've got Locatelli, who is set to cut passing lanes, stay back while attacking, conservative interceptions, and cover the centre, and of course stick to position. I nearly lost my breath there. Anyway, he's not going to look to try and impose himself like a Casemiro on a game, be super physical with the opposition. He's going to look to more or less position himself correctly, make sure that he's cutting out the passes, but he's not going to overexert himself on the defensive end of things. But he is going to look to shield the back line. Like I say, he's going to try and position himself, make the good runs, look for good passes, of course, but mainly he is going to look to protect your back 3, of course. And it does allow for Pogba and Rabiot to have the same set of instructions, but it does allow for them to bomb on forward a bit more. And like I said earlier, they are going to look to more or less expand which is quite nice with the way that it works out in FIFA at least. So Pogba and Rabiot are both set to stay forward, get into the box. Of course, they're both super strong, super tall players. Of course, I know Pogba shouldn't actually be here, it should be somebody else, but I've gone with Pogba because I do love him as a player, even though he broke my heart at Manchester United. And also he has been hugely injured this entire season, but I have gone with him for these set of instructions because I think this is more or less what Allegri would want from him if he were to play in the team, of course. So yes, both of them are set to get into the box, get forward, of course, get into the box for crosses. Normal interceptions are on, and then drift wide. So you do want them to drift wide, creating overloads in certain areas, of course, and allowing for more areas of space to be generated in behind them for Locatelli to potentially roam into, of course, or allow for overloads to happen up front where Milic is then only marked by one defender. So that's more or less what Allegri does. He tries to subsidize his lack of offensive knowledge for things like this, where he does create overloads and the team then try and score goals through the opposition lacking defensive IQ, essentially. So you do want to try and create overloads in the wide areas with the likes of Pogba as well as Adrian Rabiot bombing on forward, but also somewhat getting wider and also looking to expand the offense. And that starts with the midfield, of course. And right here you can see Rabiot's set of instructions are exactly the same as Paul Pogba. So moving on to your fullbacks or your wingbacks or your wingers. I don't know how you would see it, but I see them as wingbacks / fullbacks / wingers. Anyway, point being, they are set to come back on defense, stay wide, get them behind, get into the box, and normal interceptions. Both of them have the same set of instructions, as you can see here. Of course, it's more or less a base standard procedure when it comes to a formation like this. You do want your wide players to help you offensively, but you also need them to help you defensively, because all of a sudden you could be hit on the counter attack and it's from a wing position and you have nobody to cover you, so you draw out your entire defense to try and stop that cross from being fired in, and more times than not there's an overload in the box and you need your 3 defenders. So your wide players are very important on coming back on defense, which is why we always have these set of instructions the way we do. But mainly you do want them to be running in behind, balls fired in over the top for them to run to, the nice long diagonals from the back or from a Pogba or Rabiot. You do want those to occur at a frequent rate for these players to be effective. And of course you do want them to be firing crosses into the box for the likes of Vlahovic and Milic. Or Milik? I think it's Milik. Anyway, point being, Vlahovic, he is set to drift wide, get in behind, and then of course come back on defense. So he will be the lower striker of the two. He will look to make runs off of the like of Milik, but also he will look to drift wide from time to time, run the lanes, potentially track down potential loose balls, or even start implementing presses. But mainly he does have a load of pace to burn out. I think he's 6'3" or 6'4", incredibly high ceiling, of course, incredibly high potential, I should say. But also for a 6'4" guy to have the pace that he does, it's very much like Erling Haaland, very much like Rasmus Højlund, hopefully, and he has got a load of pace to burn. So he will also look to try and stretch the defense and also try and pull defenders away from the likes of his strike partner Milik, who will look to stay central. He will look to be a target man, of course, making sure that he is backing into the opposition, being physical with the centre backs, and also being a nice aerial target as well. He'll also have normal interceptions on, and then he'll be the focal point, so he'll stay the furthest forward at all times. So the combination plays will definitely happen between the likes of Vlahovic and Milik, who Vlahovic obviously drops deeper, collects the ball, fires it into him, he holds with the centre back, fires it back to Vlahovic, or even fires it to a running on Weah or a Kostic, of course. So that is the set of instructions I came up with for Juventus to try and replicate and recreate a really nice, realistic approach to Juventus in FIFA 23. If you can, hit that like button, subscribe if you are new to the channel, that would be damn near fantastic. 92% have not. So don't be a part of the 92, be a part of the damn near 8 and some odd percentage that have been subscribing. That would be absolutely amazing. And of course, until the next time, guys, I hope you have a damn great day. I'm out.